guys. Thursday night, man. I am so stoked seeing you guys, seeing new faces, man. Seeing some old faces that decided to show up, So I'm super happy about that, man. That's great. It's great. I'm excited. Father's Day weekend coming up, so I'm praying you all of you guys have an amazing weekend. A lot of gifts and a lot of barbecuing, I guess. I mean, no rest for the weary. But here we are tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about fatherhood under attack. And it's kind of clickbait because it's really manhood under attack. But I figured it's a Father's Day message, so I'd loop you all in regardless. Usually at this point of the study, I'll go ahead and read from the Bible, but it's one short verse. And if you want to look it up, I'm not going to bring it up just to save some time. But we're going to be in Genesis 3:9, and you should know this by now. And the Lord said, "Adam, where art thou?" Doesn't get any more clear than that, man. Adam, where art thou? Or in the modern message version, Adam, where you at? So that single verse of the Bible is so impactful today in 2021 as it was 6,000 years ago when God spoke that to Adam. And I think now, even more than ever, it resounds, and it should resound in the heart of every man that professes Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. Gentlemen, we live in a society today that's, and I keep saying this, week after week because it's prevalent, but it's gone bonkers. And the reality it is that the number one enemy, and contrary to popular belief, as our president says, white supremacy or, anything else, there's an attack on manhood. There's an attack on fathers. It's just plain and simple. And the thing is that I think that we as men, we have not grasped the seriousness of this onslaught. Because if we have, I think we would react differently. I think that we would take in a different stance altogether. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor, the surprise attack on the U.S., it caught the U.S. totally off guard. And it was a day that, that President Roosevelt said it was a day that will live in infamy. And we still, look back at it as something horrific. And, for the younger generation, it was 9/11, and, the towers. And, basically our society and we as Americans, our lives changed forever through one incident. And when both those incidents happened, well, the United States stood up with one voice and said, no, this can't happen again. And men took the charge. They were lining up at recruiting stations for the Army, the Navy, and the Marine Corps. And, by the thousands, to go out and defend this great nation because somebody had attacked it. So it was the duty of every, able-bodied man to get up and just say, hey, not today, not my family, not my country. You're not taking away my liberty. And when 9/11, the same thing happened, although not on that type of a scale. But, a lot of guys went to the recruiting stations, became, soldiers, fought in Afghanistan. You have the story of Pat Tillman, NFL player, died as a U.S. Army Ranger, making great money in the NFL, quit his career after 9/11 because of the attacks, went and died in Afghanistan. So we see that during huge attacks like that, men have always risen to the call. But today, it is not a foreign enemy that's attacking the United States. And it's not some entity that we could just say, well, it's Al-Qaeda, Hamas, whatever. It's a spiritual attack. And then it is being manipulated through our culture. But we haven't taken the same emphasis or the same priority or the same, hey, this is happening. We need to do something about it as those generations did. And even as early as 2001. Why? Because there's no buildings being collapsed. There's no, we can't see, people dying. It's not on the news. It's not prevalent. It's not something that, hey, the Japanese attacker, hey, some terror, some Muslim terrorists attacked, New York. This is subtle. This is an everyday thing that's going on. And not only is the church clueless, we've become clueless to it. And I think if we do see it, actually we turned a blind eye to it. And we're acting like it's nothing, like it's not happening, or it doesn't pertain to me. It's not my responsibility to take action. And I dare to differ with you and every man that watches this, in the future. It does. It does, because there is not only a serious attack on fatherhood, but on manhood altogether. And we're being bombarded by the media, by the culture, by an uprise in feminism, our political leaders, entertainers, musicians, athletes, and it's all coming down to one thing. You're a man and you're toxic and you need to be put out of the way. You're no good. You're just no good. So a woman has to come in and rise in your place to do what you were called to do. And that is the world speaking. That is what the world is telling you and telling your children one day and your generations to come. And you're like, well, it really doesn't happen on a large scale, Joe. And, I think you're getting a little bit carried away. You're getting overboard. 70% of all pregnancies, of all births in the US are to a single mom. 70%. So now you have 70% of children growing up without a father. So if you grew up without a father, chances are you are going to, as a girl, you're not going to want a man to take your place because you saw your mom struggle and you saw the hurt in her eyes, how she had to raise you. Or if you're a male, you saw the hurt in being that single mom and how she had to work 2 jobs or do things. And, so you take that side of femininity and you lean more towards it. The masculine side is a bad side. My father wasn't there. He was an alcoholic. He left my mom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that story plays out in homes all day, every day. Most of us here are police officers, so we walk into domestic violence situations and we see that outcome. So then you have the other 30%. Well, take that 30%, and if all the marriages in the US end in divorce, so let's cut that down in half. So now you have 15% of children being raised with 2 biological parents. 15%. And out of that 15%, I think all of us here tonight, or a lot of men that I've spoken to over many years of ministry, will tell me, the old man was there, but he wasn't. The old man was always working. The old man was doing this, was doing that, but they never had time for him. And we grow up with that father wound and that hurt and that pain. So you take that 15% of boys that have a father, and then of that 15%, I'd say a good 13% don't have a father really in their lives. So now you have 2% of a male generation being raised right. That's a serious number. That's a serious number when it comes down to 2%. And out of that 2%, not all of them are going to be outstanding. When you're talking that 92% of all males in prison today come from a home with no father. So what society has done and taken upon themselves is to say, well, thank you, but you're no longer needed. Your services are done here, Mr. Man. We don't need you. So now we have this rise of femininity coming on. And where being a masculine male simply means you're toxic, you're evil, you're bad. And society is dictating that 24/7. If we take entertainment, if you look, and I know most men here tonight, everybody grew up watching Marvel, whether it was the comic books from my era or for the younger generation watching it on the movies. And we grew up with the Batmans and the Supermans and, and the Thors and the Iron Man, and we love these characters. But Marvel have just said in their last press briefing that the Marvel universe will be a more female universe now. So it's the She-Hulk. It's the female version of Iron Man. It's the Spider-Woman. It's now going to a female character. So all the male characters in the Marvel universe are being replaced with their female companion. So Thor will now be a woman. The Hulk will be She-Hulk, and these movies are yet to come. And I don't stake my claim or proverbial, defense of war on the Marvel universe. But when you have a billion-dollar company like Disney pumping out this rhetoric, and every male in America buying into it and taking their sons to the movies and putting on the clothes and wanting to be these characters, now you have a problem, because now they're promoting their own agenda, saying, we don't need you, Dad. Women can do this just as fine. They can take up the role. You see that with 007, they wanted a female character. You see that with Mad Max. They inserted a female character. You see that with the Terminator. It became from a male to a female character. And so normally I would say, well, so goes the church, so goes the nation. But today we live in a cultural society where entertainment dictates the culture. So goes Hollywood, so goes the nation. So if Hollywood is leaning towards that, that means our generation is going to lean towards that. And you say, well, that can't be, it's not going to happen. That's just crazy talk. It's not. It's happening today. It's happening not only in movies, you see it in culture. You see the rise of the feminine aspect saying, I'm here and you need to step aside. And it's a direct attack, not only on you, but on the design that God has created. Whether society likes it or not, whether the culture likes it or not, whether this woke generation embraces it, you are the head of your household. You see, God created Adam first, and then he made Eve as his helper. Now, a lot of churches are embracing this wokeness, and they're saying, well, it's not like that. It blends, and they're both helpmates. No. Every time God wanted something, he looked for a man to do it. Why? Because that is the way his design is. I didn't create the design. I am part of it. I am proud to be who I am, born male with a purpose and design. So should you. Now, does that mean that we're in charge and we're just supposed to run around like Attila the Hut and just start, tearing things down? Absolutely not. With that responsibility comes a great demand upon us to be godly men and to be godly fathers. Some of you probably are not fathers yet and will be. So your life right now is training to be that godly father. So the essence is we're protecting manhood and fatherhood because that's what God designed it to be. It is something special, just as he designed the female counterpart to be special in her own right. One is not needless to say, the man is the head of his house. He is put there in leadership position. So if you take out the man out of any equation, you have chaos. Look around outside your window today. We have chaos, plain and simple. And I'm talking to you from a point of view. I have 2 daughters. I have 2 young ladies that I am raising, but I want to raise them as godly women with their godly intent and design. I don't want my girls to take on a masculine role. It is not their job to do so. God did not create them to be masculine. He created them to be feminine. That role falls on my shoulders. It falls on your shoulders. He needs you to raise your boys to be masculine men, to go out and fight in a world that is coming against his own masculinity. God inserted that into us for a purpose, and it is a perfect design. Now, have we messed that up? Absolutely. Why are we in the state that we're in? Look no further than the guy in front of you. We have created this chaos. Why? Because we've stepped out of God's design and out of his realm. We've distracted ourselves with the shiny objects of this life. We're so involved in our jobs and, that we forget that we have a home, that we forget that we have children to tend to, that they have needs, that we have a wife, that we have responsibilities, that our careers are not everything. God did not design us to be the best police officer in the country or the best lawyer or the best doctor or the best, insert your career in it, even the best pastor. He called us to be fathers, He called us to be men. He called us to fight for the injustices. He called us to fight for our families, for our friends, for our neighbors, for our brothers, to be involved in him so he can show up his perfect design through us. But we've taken matters into our own hands as we do on anything. We never look at the instruction book, in this case being the Bible, and we just say, I can fix this. A couple of trips to Home Depot and I'll be back and we're all good. But that's not the case when it comes to spiritual matters. The world is unleashing an ongoing attack. And I'm just going to show you a brief thing here. I'm going to bring this up. We're going to do a share screen. It's not something I normally do, but I just want to share this with you. I can open this. This is the cover of Vogue magazine. This is the cover of Vogue magazine in 2021. I'm not even going to say anything. I'm not even going to remark on it. The cover of Purple Fashion magazine. J.W. Anderson men's fall fashion for 2021. These are not internet, memes or screenshots. These are actual photos from their website. And this is Harry Styles on the cover of Vogue magazine last December. Now, that an artist will do this or a magazine, they're always going to push the envelope. But the next slide is going to impact, and here we are with Lenny Kravitz, famous musician. And you can see what he's having here to say. That it's time to run the world and look at the mess we've made. But this one, out of all the pictures you've seen, I think the next slide will be the most impactful. This was Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, not an actor, not a musician, not an athlete, one of the leaders of the free pandemic together and discussing how we will never have a repeat. I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit internet connections here. Have a repeat of what we've seen, but also that we are building back together and building back greener and building back fairer and building back gender neutral and feminine way. This is Boris Johnson, again, the Prime Minister of England. Not a rock star, not an athlete, a leader of a Western country, a major Western country, saying we got to, and he's talking about a post-COVID world and what the leaders of the G7 need to do, that we need to rebuild in a feminine way. Now, let that sink in there for a minute. I can rant here and probably won't go any further than YouTube and maybe a couple of that'll hear what I'm saying tonight. But that is the Prime Minister of the United States. I don't know what is. Telling the other leaders of the free world, this is what we need to do, then we have a problem. We have a major, major and grave problem. And don't look for the church for answers, because the church is embracing that kind of thinking. When you have women pastors, when you have more women leaders in the church than men, you've embraced something that the Bible doesn't say. Attend a church today where you have a woman co-pastor or a woman leader. This is my opinion. I suggest you leave, because that church is not doing what the Bible says it does. Because the qualifications and what it takes to be a pastor or a leader in a church are outlined in the book of Timothy and Paul and Colossians and throughout the entire Bible. And it's very clear. It's not left to interpretation. It is very black and white. But we found ourselves in a climate where the culture dictates to us what's going to happen, and we've embraced it. And that's why we're in the state we're in. When we look at our schools and we see the atrocities that go on each and every day, or we look at the homes that we go into as officers or people that you know, or when you read the news and when you see things, the vileness and stealing and just debauchery, you ask yourself, what happened? We have. That we forget the responsibilities that we have before God. And God is screaming, as he did to Adam in Genesis 3:9, Adam, where are you? And he's saying, Joe, where are you? And Mike, where are you? And Tony, where are you? And Carlos, where are you? And insert your name there. Where are you? God is not going to come down from earth, from heaven, and just make things right. That's what he placed us here for. That's why he made you a man and not a woman. He made you a living, breathing male created in his image. And he gave you dominion over the animals and over the sea and over the fish and over the garden, and to take care of it. That's what he told Adam from day one. This is your mess. Do it. And that has been passed down to every man, from Adam to us. But somehow in that generational passing down, we've slipped. We've let go of the reign. Well, my wife does a good job taking care of the garden, so I'll let her do it. Or the women do a much better job than us anyways, so why not let her do it? Negative. It's not what God intended. And every time when men have fallen and have failed to do what has been called to do, and look at it from Genesis to Revelation, a curse falls on the land. God curses the land. And that's what we're living at right now. We're living in this chaos because we failed, and God said, now you're in it. Now you're in 6 feet deep in it. Gentlemen, we need to make a change. We need to make a change quickly. Now, I'm not saying you're going to turn around and you're going to be at the G7 meeting, or you're going to, talk to the editor of Vogue. But the difference you make in your home, in your community, with the people that you interact with, the people that you reach on an everyday level, will make a ripple effect that will last generations. How we raise our children, how we dictate fatherhood, how we dictate manhood will last generations. Because we're going to be sons of our fathers, and our sons will be sons of us. And that will continue. But if they see weakness in us, if they see that we don't care about the things of God, that we're not with the things of God, that it's not a priority, that everything else becomes a priority, and God becomes a minute part of his life, then your sons and your daughters are going to view God in the same way. Don't think that your children aren't going to embrace the things of God if you didn't do it before. And before you know it, your sons are going to live in a world where it's better to be more feminine than it is to be masculine, because they don't want to be toxic. And that's what they're being taught in schools. And that's what society's teaching them. And that's what the internet's teaching them. That's what social media is teaching them. And that's what the movies are portraying to them. And before you know it, they're going to live in a world even more chaotic than we are. This is where we take a stand. This is our 9/11. This is our December 7th, 1941. Because if we don't turn it around, I assure you, the day is long that the curse that will come upon this land will be devastating. And we can't blame society, and we can't blame anybody but the men that God has placed in this time, for such a time as this, to make a difference in the lives of so many around us. We have to stop embracing the culture. We have to stop embracing the cultural mindset and start embracing a godly concept of what manhood is. I don't care what Hollywood pumps out. I don't care what social media says. I don't care what any organization says. I care what the Bible says. You know, that I saw an interview, I read an interview actually between Demi Lovato, and I'm sure most of you know who she is, and the actress Jane Fonda. And she was talking about her whole role being non-binary now and talking about that. And she said that the one thing that was holding her back was this whole patriarchal system. This whole patriarch, and that's a new catchphrase now with woke culture, the patriarchal system. Patriarch, meaning there's a man there, and that man's influence, well, that's got to go. And the whole article was just about that, was just about how this patriarchal system needs to be eradicated. We don't need that anymore. That's never gotten us anywhere. That is a direct attack on God himself, because God created the patriarchal system. God is the head, then comes us, then comes the wife, then comes the kids, in that order. He's the head of us as we are the head of our wives. But we've inverted those roles because it's taboo, and I don't want to cause any ways, or I don't want to get in trouble by saying something that I shouldn't, and get in trouble at work, or get in trouble with I don't want to say something on social media, and then everybody's going to jump on me, and then I'm going to be cancel culture. I'd rather be canceled by the culture than canceled by God, because there's going to come a day where we're going to have to face that mighty God, and he's going to ask him, where were you at? Where were you at when manhood was being destroyed? Where were you at when fathers were being picked apart? Did you stand up? Did you do what I called you to do? Well, no, Lord, because cancel culture at the time was pretty heavy. So, I kept my mouth shut. I just was on the defensive. I didn't want to speak out loud. There will be a day where we will stand next to Moses and to Aaron and to Joshua and to King David and to all these great men of the Bible. And we're going to see what these men did in all their heroics. We've read about it. Their failures and their triumphs. And they're going to look to us. And they're going to say, what did you do with your generation? I hid. Just like Adam did in the garden. That's why God said, where are you? Is that what we want to face these men and tell them when it's all said and done? Is that the legacy we want to live and leave our children? That manhood crumbled because my father's generation did nothing about it. I'm wearing a dress today, 10, 15 years in the future because my dad didn't stop this when it happened. My dad's generation failed to do what God called them. So now I don't even know what's right and what's wrong anymore. God has always called a man to rise up and to fight for that generation. He's always called us from Genesis on through. He's called up men to rise up and fight the injustices that a generation has brought upon them. And he's backed them up. This is our calling. This is our time. And if we fail to do so, we will pick up the remnants of our generations to come, and they will be destroyed. We can go on living the way we are and pretend it's not happening. Pretend, dude, you've over-exaggerated. You're crazy. You're seeing stuff that's not there. That's okay. But there'll continue to be 92% of children without a father in prison, 70% of those children born out of wedlock without a dad, and more men will keep getting feminized by a culture, and more women will rise up to the leadership power, and God was going to put an end to it sooner or later, and he's going to say, I've had enough, and that curse is going to come down like a ton of bricks upon the land. And in that moment, we can't say, oh, we were never warned, we were never told. This is the moment we've been warned, this is the moment we've been told, and this is what are we going to do with it kind of moment. I'm raising 2 girls to be godly women. So when they find a godly man in the future, Lord willing, they can continue on a godly legacy as a couple. I'm not raising 2 boys, 2 girls to grow up like boys and say, hey, you got to fight for everything you got, and you got to give up, and take on a job, and you don't need a man. You can do this on your own. No, it's the world talking. They need a husband. They need a helpmate, but they need a husband that's going to look towards God and love them and treat them like the woman that they need to be as a godly woman. And they're going to complement one another. And they're going to raise godly children and influence their world, Lord willing. But if we let society and we let culture and we let social media raise our kids, or we let the influence of actors, politicians, musicians, and athletes tell your children what they need to think and how they need to act, and it's not coming from us, you've got disaster written. It's a train of disaster coming at you at 100 miles an hour. Can we change this? Can we turn the tide on a global scale? Absolutely, we have the power to do it. But it's going to take the spark of one man to say, this is where I draw the line in the sand, and say, not my house. And another man doing the same thing, saying, not my house. And raising those children and raising the standard and moving forward with the word of God before him, and say, no matter what the world decides it's going to do, I am a father, I'm a man, I'm a husband, and I am a son of the living God created in his image. And let whatever's coming at you deflect off of you and focus on what's eternal. Because whatever you see with your eyes today, gentlemen, there's an expiration date on it. We can chase our careers, we can chase cars, we can chase our 401s, we can chase our retirements, we can chase everything imaginable under the sun, but it's all got an expiration date on it. The only thing that will last is what you do today for God. Period. That's the only thing that's got an eternal timestamp on it. Everything else that your hands or my hands touch will cease to exist. There's no need for plumbers in heaven. There's no need for policemen in heaven. There's no need for doctors in heaven. There's no need for lawyers, teachers, astronauts, politicians. There's no need for it. So don't put that over your families, thinking you're doing something great for them when you're only stealing from them, because that's only putting you under attack. Heaven will be made up of men who loved God, who pursued God, who believed and trusted in God, and led their families through those gates. Not because they were doctors or lawyers or policemen or psychologists, because they were men who loved God. And above all circumstances, put it all on the line for their families and their brothers. Those are the men that will make up the kingdom of heaven. Not the activist, not the socialist, not the pacifist. It is the warrior that God intended you to be. That's the one that's going to enter through the gates. And he's not going to enter unscathed. He's going to enter with scars, with wounds, beat up, missing an eye, with a broken arm. But it's eternal. It's eternal. Think about that. What are you chasing today? Because that's only destroying you. Because if it's not God, it's attacking you. It's attacking you to distract you from your role as a father, from your role as a man, because it's pulling you in a different direction. So if something pulls you away, it is simply attacking you. And that's what the world is doing. They are simply attacking you. And today we need to fight back. In this war, there's no guns, there's no vest, there's no tanks, there's no planes. It's a spiritual warfare battle. And we need to do that and wage it on a spiritual level. And if we do that, we will succeed. Whether it's this group, 1 million men, 2 million, or 5 billion people, whatever it is, we need to do it because those lives matter. Our children matter. Our generations to come matter because God should matter to us. Gentlemen, fatherhood and manhood is under attack. Declare war on it. Declare war on it. Win the battle. Guys, that's all I got, man. The floor is yours tonight.